Okay, so hey guys, my name is Mike Tarallo. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager with Qlik. I'm also a moderator and administrator for the Qlik Sense community forums. I'd like to welcome you to this new webinar series we call Do More with Qlik for Beginners and Beyond. And I'm excited to have with me today Jeff Goldberg. Let me just go to this slide right here. And he's joining me as a special guest. He's a product manager for integration and APIs. And I want to encourage you to stay with us as we share our contagious enthusiasm for Qlik product knowledge. And we're going to introduce to you the latest features and capabilities and solutions. And also, a little side note, I do wish you all well during these crazy times. And I want to thank you for your time taking it out of your busy schedule to join us. Okay, so today on Do More with Qlik, we're just going to briefly talk about a couple of things here, as I mentioned, and a couple of questions came in as well. So on June 4th, we did kick off the series. We had tremendous success with it. If you missed the previous session, you should get an email with the link to the recorded session if you registered. But I'm also archiving these in YouTube. So I'm working with my program manager, getting them as MP4 files, putting them up on YouTube, and then putting them within a community index page. So they will be available for previous viewing as well. So you guys can review these and more resources at that page at your leisure. And I'll make sure that you have that link by the end of the session today. Today, my guest, Jeff Watch the Video Goldberg, is going to provide a demonstration of our new command line interface for Qlik Sense SaaS, known as qlik-cli. I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items real quick. The Q&A panel, as you mentioned, I would encourage you to type in the questions during the presentation, and Jeff and I will cover them as needed, if applicable, during the presentation or at the end. I will warn you, the qlik-cli interface is fairly new to myself as well. So, Jeff, if you're okay with it, I might interject with some questions and jump in here and there. So I don't want to interrupt you too much, but I'm an inquisitive type of person, so I hope you're okay with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Please feel free to jump in. And folks, if you see things as we're going along, or if you find that I'm going a little too fast, please feel free to give a shout out in the Q&A to go a little bit slower. It's a pretty exciting thing. So I've been playing a lot with it in the last couple of weeks and writing some scripts in advance of this webinar. Looking forward to sharing them with you.
Perfect. And we definitely want to hear from you, so please speak up. One other quick thing, so you can get in touch with us directly. If you need to get in touch with us and you want to learn more, contact us at qlik.com or follow us for immediate updates and insights on our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, conversation with Jeff and myself can always be joined in the Qlik community. Okay. Also, for those of you who have registered, if you reply to the registration email, an email will come directly to me, and I could address any questions that way. Okay, so on to today's special guest. So, Jeff, I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'm going to turn it over to you. And I'd like to turn on your screen share when you're ready. But why don't you tell us today what we're going to learn about with Qlik's new command line interface for SaaS?
Sure. So, and they can see you, but they can't see me. Interesting. Oh, yep, there we go.
When you talk, so, there you go.
Very cool. All right. Sorry, this is my first live webinar experience. It's very exciting. So the qlik-cli is an extension of Qlik Sense SaaS. And what I mean by that is not so much the visualization extensions that people are typically used to that you put inside of the client. But this is really a tool for administrators and for DevOps engineers who are looking to automate Qlik Sense SaaS activities, whether that's running tasks or reloads or checking on reloads, moving apps from one environment to another, being able to change things like ownership in bulk, and be able to do some quick evaluations and data checks on information that is being reloaded into applications. And the idea of a CLI or a command line interface is something that it's funny. I was just reading a ZDNet article that was posted in 2019 last year that talks about the renaissance of command line interfaces. And a lot of it's being driven by, AWS and Azure as we move applications and we move to more cloud platforms. Developers and system administrators want to be able to access these tools and these platforms, but they don't necessarily want to go through the management console interfaces because they're typically doing like bulk operations and stuff like that. So that's really the main reason why we decided to come out with a productized or commercialized Qlik CLI for SaaS. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the Qlik CLI. If you're a Qlik Sense on Windows customer, you've used the Qlik CLI that the Qlik consulting team and Adam Hayden in particular has worked on for the past few years. And it's an amazing tool. And there's a lot that we've learned from Adam's experience as well as the rest of the consulting team's experience with that tool that's kind of informed the kinds of things that we want to do here. As far as like demo today, I'll be taking you through just some basics of what the CLI looks like, what some of the basic commands are, and then I've written some PowerShell scripts because I know a lot of people are on the Windows platform. Don't make fun of me and my PowerShell scripting skills because I basically retaught myself PowerShell this week. But we'll go through some things and play around with the CLI.
But one thing, I won't be able to write batch scripts with this, correct?
Well, what you do is you don't necessarily write batch scripts with it, but you take the commands and you actually put them into batch scripts. So what you're going to see in these PowerShell scripts that I've written are actually batches. And one of the things that we'll get to is when we get to reloads, where actually I've built kind of a rudimentary task chaining example. So we'll go through that. So let's go ahead and share screen. Here it comes. All right. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. And if it's not big enough, let me know. Make sure you go full screen. Hopefully you can see the prompts. Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's so far good on my side, Jeff.
All right, cool. All right. So I've just got, I've got a couple of windows open. I've got my phone over here on the left-hand side, and we'll play with that in a little bit. But my main screen, I've got a PowerShell window open. I also have the PowerShell scripting environment open here, which we'll get to in a minute. And then I have my Qlik Sense SaaS tenant in the background. And nice thing about the Qlik CLI is it's pretty easy to install. If you're using PowerShell, you can install it using qlik-cli. qlik-cli is a package manager for Windows. And then if you're on a Mac, you can install it using Brew. And we're coming out with a Linux distribution. And then if you go out to Qlik Open Source Software GitHub, we have the release binaries there so that you can download and install it if you don't have access to those package managers. Once you have it installed, you just go to a command prompt and you type in Qlik, and it will bring up the beginning of the documentation. And what we're starting off with here with Qlik Sense SaaS is the number of public APIs that we have. So one of the responsibilities I have as the API product manager is not only working with other product managers and the R&D team on the APIs that are being created, but also the governance flow and the deprecation policies and the different, basically the API strategy that we have. And so one of the things that we have available today are a number of different public endpoints within our SaaS platform, and we have more that are being added every day. And you'll see those come through in updates to Qlik CLI. But right away, you see we've got Qlik, and then there's a number of different sections. So we have our content management commands, things that you can do with apps. We have collections and items, which are equivalent to things like apps, media files, data files, and that sort of thing. And then spaces, and spaces are a new concept within Qlik Sense SaaS. They're similar to streams in that they do contain apps, and they contain lists of users that can access those apps. But spaces themselves work a little bit differently, and there's some content out there that you can read about if you want to learn more about spaces. Today, we're just going to be using it kind of similar to how a stream works inside of the Windows platform. And you can see we've got reloads, and then we have some system management commands working with API keys that are necessary for using the CLI, as well as some advanced API keys so that you can do things like make raw commands. So you can do raw API requests to Qlik Sense SaaS. So if you know of some API endpoints that are public, but they're not necessarily showing up here, you can actually write out and go to those endpoints directly. One of the things that we're working on is also adding some functionality so that you'll be able to do some Windows calls to the Windows environment as part of app migration scenarios, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. There's also things, with respect to completion and on and on. But if we go ahead and we type in Qlik app and we type in Qlik app help, right? Every time we enter a command, we can always add a -- help at the end. And this will give us additional commands inside of that. So when we look at app, we have the ability to copy, create, do all sorts of things that we normally can do just by clicking around in the interface. So if we start off, I can go ahead and type Qlik app create. And this is the command for creating an app. And if I want to create an app with a name, I can just go ahead and type in attributes name, like so, and I'll give it a name of I like Mike, and I can just go ahead and hit enter at this point. And I can also add a -q, and a -q will make sure that only the app ID comes back. But if I click on this without the q, you'll see that a whole JSON blob comes back with a lot of information related to that application. And if I go ahead and refresh my browser right here, you'll see there's my I Like Mike app.
That is awesome.
Okay. Now, an app's great, but it's not really that great if you don't have any data in it. So what I can do is I can set a script . I have this script called goodscript.qvs. And if I add the app command, and then I take this resource ID, which is, for those familiar with the Windows platform, that's the GUID that represents the app. I can go ahead and paste that in. And I run that, and now it's added the script. So if I go into the app here, and I go up to the data load editor, you'll see here's my script. And I'm just using basically the control-0-0 script here.
Yeah.
Now I'll go ahead and I'll come back out into the hub. And we've got I Like Mike. And now we want to reload. Now reloads is a different command, right? We saw that at the very beginning. So if we go to Qlik reload and we type in help, now we can see that there's 3 commands inside of that. There's the create, which gives us the ability to reload an app specified by an app ID, and we can get the status of a reload. So I'm just going to clear this out, and I'll type Qlik reload create -- app ID, and I'll paste in the app ID. And that will create a reload. And now if I go Qlik reload and then...
So is that creating like a reload task?
That's creating a reload task, and it's actually kicking off the reload. So this item ID that's here, or this ID for the reload, is what we'll use when we call qlik reload get, and then the ID, hit enter, and you can see that it's succeeded. And now if we go into the app again, oops, I don't want to drop an app anywhere I'd like. Let me refresh the screen here. And I open up, I can go ahead and create my new sheet. And if I edit my sheet,
already loaded.
Yeah, I can say, all right. And just as an example, you can see that. And then I can add a measure. I can't remember how to add a measure. Let's just create.
You've been working in the
chart.
command line too long.
That's right. Yeah. I don't know how to use the interface anymore. So dim1, and then I can go ahead and add a measure here, and I can just do the count of dim1, like so, and there's my count. So, what we've done here is just a pretty basic example of creating an app, adding a script, and but if you think about it from a DevOps perspective, like some of the things that you can do is, let's say you have you've pulled scripts out of applications and you want to do some sort of like variable replacement or anything like that. You could use tools like PowerShell to actually manipulate the script and then add the script back into the app and reload it. You can automate different types of things like, it starts to conjure things like loop and reduce and potentially even loop and distribute kinds of sequences. But that's kind of the basics of things that you can do with the platform.
Jeff,
let's just pause for a second and take any sort of questions you got.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I got a question actually, because it sounded like you said something about like injecting script.
Yeah.
So is there any security concerns in regards to that? Because I think of, there's got to be something to prevent that, or what is the solution around there?
Well, so the thing about working with the CLI and the fact that I'm able to, what I didn't show you here is I didn't show you that I have something called, a context, right? And if I look at my different contexts, right, you can see I have two different connections available to me to two different Qlik Sense tenants. And in order to access these, tenants, I need to get an API key. And the API key is something that I can get by going into the settings here, and I can grab an API key. And once I generate that new key, I can take that key and I can put it into the context. And now what I'm doing is I'm making a secure connection. So as a developer, I can go ahead and I can work with, I can work in a secure manner here. And as far as the script and injecting script, what you're doing is you're working with the load script. So it's not like you're injecting like code, you're injecting Qlik script. And obviously, with anything that you're working with that's like that, if you don't know the source of where you're getting that information from, you should do your due diligence to make sure that it's, what you expect.
We have a question in regards to compatibility with early versions of Qlik Sense. What would, I guess, the earliest version this would work with for SaaS?
So this should work with...
It's just for SaaS, right? So it's whatever version we're running on, the latest platform version.
Yep. So this version of Qlik CLI is for the SaaS editions of Qlik Sense. The way that it's set up today in this first release is it's intended for the cloud editions of the platform. Like I said, there is a Qlik CLI Windows, which is maintained by the Qlik consulting team, and that's been out for a number of years now. And one of the things that we're looking at and reviewing and is on our roadmap are adding some connectivity to the Windows platform or the on-premises versions of Qlik Sense using this new version of qlik-cli. And in most cases, it's not necessarily going to be for full-on automation, but there will be certain things that you'll be able to do, especially if you're looking to move workloads to the cloud and stuff like that. But then there will be some basic things that you'll still be able to do inside of your Windows instances as well.
Okay, I'm going to read a couple of questions before you continue, just so we could, because a lot of the same questions came in here in regard to an on-premise solution. So Jeff did cover that, stating that this particular solution only works on our SaaS-based deployments of Qlik Sense or SaaS-based editions of Qlik Sense. That's another of the same questions. And can qlik-cli be used with Qlik Sense on Kubernetes as well? And the answer to that is not at this time. As mentioned, Jeff, is you can elaborate on that, or just similar to what you said earlier. We're looking at other things.
Able to, if you can generate API keys with the Kubernetes platform. Unfortunately, I'm not too familiar with all of the things on the Kubernetes platform, but if you can generate API keys, you should be able to connect to the Kubernetes instance and be able to run these same commands. So a lot of where qlik-cli has come from is from another command line interface that was built for Qlik Core called Core CTL. The same team, the developer platform team that that worked on Qlik Core, has adapted this to work with the SaaS editions of Qlik Sense. So what I want to jump into now, because I know we've only got about 7 minutes left in the half hour, is just some of the things that you can do from an auto magic standpoint. So I showed you basic how to go ahead and create just an app, but what if I wanted to create multiple apps at one time? Well, it's as simple as going ahead and running that command, and then I can put it in something like a for loop. So if I want to create a whole bunch of apps, I can just do the script I have right here, and what it will do is it will go ahead and it will run and create a number of apps, hopefully. There we go. So now it's just created 10 new applications, and if we go into here, we can see that I now have apps from CLL app -0 all the way to -9. And then if I want to, I can go ahead and I can look and see whether or not there's a space called qlik-cli. And what I can do is if I run this spaces check, this should do two things. So it will create the space, and then it will go ahead and give me an error. Let's find out what that error is.
The space already exists.
Okay. Might be an issue with my script, but the idea here is that now that I have created that space, I should be able to actually move those items into that space using this Qlik app space update, where I can take the app ID and I can supply the space ID, and with that information, just go ahead and loop through those apps and add them into the space. Now the other thing that I can do is I can do some things like rudimentary task chaining. So in this case, I can look at, I just wrote some JSON, and this JSON basically just has, different tasks, has 4 tasks in it. And the run essentially identifies the app to run against, and then also whether or not it succeeds or fails. Now, one of the things I need to make sure of that I do is that I add scripts to the application. So I'm just going to run this really quick. And this is something that is a PowerShell thing. And again, my PowerShell knowledge isn't too great, but the apps do load the, add the scripts to them. And so now what I can do is I can run a function that basically will look at this JSON, and it will run, and based on whether or not it succeeds or fails, it will go ahead and kick off additional apps. So if I run task chaining 101, we'll go ahead and it will run task 1, and when it comes back, it will tell me how long it took. And while that's running, let's ask some questions. Is there an ability to recover from commands, undo, restore that were executed? It's a good question. I think that like if you were going to like run a create command, it's going to create the app. But if you know that that was a mistake, you could always delete the app. Because it's REST that we're communicating with, typically what you're going to have to do is send another command that's actually going to rectify whatever it is that you've done. So you can see in the script here, right, that reload task 1 completed and it succeeded, and it went to task 2, but task 2 failed. So now it immediately went to task 4. It skipped task 3 because in our settings here, if task 2 succeeds, it'll go on to the next one, versus if it fails, it'll go to the last one. So this is just a basic rudimentary script using the reload command, and then the items command, which allows you to find the app IDs so that you can run the reload command, and then you can loop and look at the reload status. And now you've got essentially the ability to do some pretty cool stuff. And then the last thing I want to show, because we've got not a whole lot of time left, like 1 minute,
you're good. You're good.
I have this script that will send data, because you can actually use something called the Eval command to look at data inside of an application. And if we run this Twilio script, and let me fire up my phone real quick. Da-da-da. And I hit enter here. What you can do is you can send an ID, and in that ID, you'd be able to go ahead and send data. But let me just run that command so you can see what the eval command looks like. And I can actually put in the name here, so CLI app 0. So you can actually do quick checks. So now what I can see is I can see that this is 698, 653, 630 for that. And if I go in and I look at CLI app 0 right here.
It's like a good way to validate.
It's a great way. And it's also, and the idea with the text messages, it's a great way that based on different thresholds, based on the data that you see, or that gets reloaded, you can actually use different tools that interact with each other to send information. And so if we go ahead and we add the count of dim1 here, 698, 630, 653. There we go. So I see that there are a couple more questions. Would a find replace script over multiple apps be a use case? Certainly. And what you could do is you could get the script, you could process it, do those finds and replaces inside of the script itself, and then set that back inside of the application. And so as you're looping, let's say you wanted to do a loop and reduce, or you wanted to do a loop and distribute of an app by region, right? And you were doing, you had a sales app and you wanted to carve it up by region. What you could do, right, is you could have your different regions listed, and like in a JSON file or a text file, and then you could loop through that. And for each reload that you want to call, you could create an app, set the script setting the variable to that region for that dimension value, which would then show up in your where clauses because you could leverage the variable that way, and basically set the script, do the reload, and push those out. Now you've got those new apps, or you've got apps that you can refresh, and then you can notify people that those apps are ready.
So use cases pretty much are limited to imagination at that point. If you really think about it,
yes.
There's a lot of things you have to do with the third-party integration. So if I wanted to learn more about this, I'm more of a cut and paste programmer. So I kind of wanted to find some samples and ways to really get started. I'm sorry, I hate reading doc, but I know I have to do it. Do we go to branch, or where do we go for that?
Yeah, so great question. We just released a new developer portal, and we've got some, we're pretty light on some of the documentation that's there right now, but we're adding stuff every day. And inside of this new developer portal, we have inside of the automate section, we've got a getting started with qlik-cli. And so this will take you through the install, and then it will take you through generating your API key, getting that API key, and then going ahead and really kind of going back through some of the things that we did today. So
that's at qlik.dev?
That's qlik.dev.
Okay. And did you answer the question from our colleague, William Britt? Can you do a script to import a directory of QVS files?
I haven't answered it yet, but I will. Okay. Bill, the answer is absolutely you could. Is if you had a folder of scripts, right, you can do qlik app import as a command, and you effectively specify the app ID. If you're uploading a QlikView file, you specify an app ID, which would be a GUID that you want to provide. If you're importing a QVF, you would just specify the file that you want to upload. So there's that. There's also the ability to export, and again, because of the origins of this tool, if we go to Qlik app and help, you'll see that there are build and unbuild commands. So one of the things that we're looking at in terms of some of the other use cases that you would use the CLI for is the ability to actually unbuild applications and get the exploded JSON files, and those exploded JSON files could then be added to some place like GitHub. So you could do source control and version control of applications because you could use the build and unbuild commands to handle that.
All right. Any other questions coming in? We'll wait a couple seconds. While we're waiting, Jeff, this was fantastic, and I definitely want to have you on again. I know there's a lot more that we can cover. The format of these particular sessions are to be kept to about 30 minutes total, probably with a little bit of intro and outro. So one thing I'd like to do is first see if Jeff has any final words, and then I have to have one last slide just to talk about our next session. Yeah,
so just a couple of things. thanks for being part of the webinar today. I'm super excited about what we're going to be able to do with this CLI in terms of automation and helping people move workloads to the cloud, and then once they're there, automate a number of the different activities that you're constantly doing as you're managing a Qlik Sense environment. So look forward to your feedback when you use it. Like Michael said, feel free to communicate through LinkedIn, through Qlik Community. If you've got an idea for the Qlik CLI, hit the idea forum on Qlik Community and make sure to add something there, and I'll be more than happy to take a look at it.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Jeff. Let me see if I could take over the screen share for a quick moment.
Absolutely. Let me end it.
Wrap things up. Okay. Usually takes about a second or so. Perfect. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about our next session. So as we mentioned, we have hold these twice a month. If there's questions coming in, Jeff, you could address them through text at this time through the Q&A panel, if you'd like. The next session we're going to hold is July 9th. And again, 2 p.m. Eastern at this time. This will be a session on a topic that is sometimes overlooked for newer users, but even existing users of Qlik, they don't know the whole story. So if you think you know about the associative difference, I would say think again and join me on this session to learn more about the associative insights and our cognitive capabilities that really do help you find the unexpected. And I'm going to be demonstrating practical examples of how this actually helps you find that unexpected and helps allow you to ask additional questions you didn't think of asking. So this is another one of those sessions you don't want to miss. The other thing I did want to mention is that you too can join me on a Do More with Qlik session. It's not just limited to myself or our Qlik employees. I'm opening it up to partners and community members as well. If you have an idea, a solution, software, a particular tip or trick that you want to share with anybody that is a Qlik enthusiast or loves working with Qlik and its people, contact me through the reply to the registration email. Let me know what you want to do, and we can set up the meeting and have you on the next session. Okay. At this point, what we're going to do is just go through the questions, see if there's any additional questions. If not, you guys could sign off, and I hope to see you on the next one and have a discussion with myself and others in the Qlik community. Take care, guys, and thank you so much for joining. Stay well, stay safe,